Good day, everybody. Welcome to what I hope you will find to be a very inspiring and enlightening interview as we continue to explore the world of Gene Keys and as we continue to meet all these cool people in the Gene Keys community. And today I'm really honored to have Sylvia Hutton, who is somebody that has come to me through the work of Gene Keys, and I've just been listening to her work, listening because she is a singer, amongst other things. So she has many talents, of which she'll be sharing them with us here today. And I'm very excited to share her journey because I feel that so much of what she shares is about the authenticity of voice and authenticity of ourselves. And it's one of the reasons she and I have really resonated with one another, I think, and really connected with one another. So I'm excited to introduce you all to her, and we get to know her, and we'll play a little bit of her music, and you'll get to hear a little bit of that. And so I'm really excited for this interview. And really, I want Sylvia to step forward and kind of introduce herself and share what she would like the world to know about her at this time.
Wow. Thank you for that introduction, Matthew. What would I like the world to know about me? That's a good question. Um, I guess in the context of the Gene Keys community, I'm very new to the community. I really started in June. I heard Richard Rudd speak on Gaia on Regina Meredith's program, Open Minds, and I was just blown away by and very intrigued by this idea of the Gene Keys. So I never do this. I mean, I went online and bought the books. I've said I'm all in. I just jumped in. And I'm so glad that I did. And my whole journey in life feels like it's been about finding my authentic voice. And I just resonated so strongly with this. And I think the very first thing was Richard Rudd's voice. I'm very tuned into people's voices, and there's a resonance in his it comes from such a deep place, and it's so relaxed and so in the moment. And so it's just rare to experience someone speaking from that place so clearly. And that's, I guess, all my years of training have helped me to be able to recognize or discern when I hear that in someone's voice. And I have to say, everything that I've experienced since June with the Gene Keys and my own profile, with the online community, I'm in the Venus sequence right now with everyone, and just everything just so resonates with me and with my voice and everything that I've learned so far on the journey. And what I love is there's just such a depth of learning that can continue. And I feel like this is probably the methodology I'm going to be diving into the rest of my life. um, what else do I want to say here about voice? I've been very dedicated to learning about my own voice. I've had a really interesting experience. I grew up in Kokomo, Indiana. I'm the oldest of three children. When I was very small, lived in a little trailer park in Kokomo, Indiana, and very meager beginnings, very, both my parents worked in factories for General Motors making car radios. So they were actually in the music business too. That's why I always joke. So I've always been around music, but no one in my family, in my immediate family, at that time had an interest in music. My brother since then has become a guitar player, and he's also loves music. But I've just mainly I took piano lessons as a child, but I couldn't concentrate on the music because I just would rather sing it than play it. So when I moved to Nashville, there was a little bit of, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and there was some pressure to learn to play an instrument, but I just wanted to focus on voice. I just couldn't do both. It felt like it distracted from the singing. So voice has been a lifelong pursuit. And what I have found is that everything in voice is analogous to life. And that's why it's, there's many, myriad ways into the soul, into our depths. But for me, this journey in this lifetime is really through voice. What I'm is the way I'm learning. And so that's all I know to say at this point. You might want to ask me something else.
Oh, absolutely. I got lots of questions, but and I've peeked at your Gene Keys chart, so I can see where voice is such a big part of it. I've looked at your Gene Keys chart. I see the Gene Keys that you have there, especially in your pearl sphere, right? Or your pearl sequence, and how much they have related to voice. And you've had quite a, one of the reasons I love chatting with you is because you've got this new album, Nature Child, that we will talk about and we'll play some songs from during our excursion today. And, one of the things that I loved when you were sharing with me the story of Nature Child is that it's been a long time in the making. It's something that you really wanted to bring to the world. And in your previous life in the world of music, some of it was just the music wasn't necessarily your true voice. It wasn't necessarily the words you wanted to express in the world. There was, you had the fame, you had the money, you had the, you had the traveling all around the United States by the sounds of it and things like that. But, from what I've heard of your journey, now there's just a joy that you're expressing your authentic voice with your music. And I'd love for you to just speak to some of that if you wouldn't mind.
Yes. No, thank you for asking that. Um, in the early days of my career, I moved from Indiana to Tennessee. My father was from Tennessee. And so it was a natural thing for me to move to Nashville. I grew up listening to all kinds of music, pop music, rock music, country music, everything. But my dad being from the South, it just felt like the place that I would want to be. And it was a great decision looking back. During the 1980s, I had a recording contract with RCA Records and recorded for RCA for 8 years. And it was a great experience because I got to experience learning to sing in the studio, learning to sing on stage. It was all exploration of singing, but it isn't just about singing. It's about the voice in connecting with other people.
Mm.
I love to sing by myself in a room that nobody has to be listening. There's a joy in that. But there's another kind of joy that comes from connecting with people through music. And what the obstacle was in the 80s, I was having success in the country music field in the 1980s. And I just recorded under my first name, Sylvia, and still do, just under my name, Sylvia. Nobody, pretty much people don't know my last name. But as the years went along and I'm singing music that is successful in the eyes of the culture, in the eyes of radio, in the eyes of music industry, it didn't have very much depth to it. It had nothing to do with me as a human being and my experiences in life. It was just, you were trying to create hit songs and ear candy for people. And I'm really glad that I got to do that. And there's some songs that were good songs. Tumbleweed was my first top 10 record, and there were a lot of great songs that I got to record. My biggest song was a song called Nobody, which I've joked a little bit with you about it because it's like I came to Nashville trying to be somebody, and I got a song called Nobody that made me kind of somebody. But then then I realized, I don't want to be somebody in that way. So I've gone back into being nobody,
Yeah.
into anonymity again, which is just beautiful. I love the humor of the universe in this whole play of the music and the voice. But I felt an emptiness in the music. It didn't express. I felt like people were getting to know me between the songs, not during the songs. So I pulled back at the end of the 1980s and really began writing music. And the first music that I wrote were 6 of the songs that's on this new record that I put out. So this record has been in the making for like 34 years.
34 years. That's incredible.
34 years. Nature Child. I wrote the first 6 songs with my friend Verlin Thompson. And what sparked the writing of this music was this deep desire to have something of real value to share with people, and especially these little kids that came to my concerts. That was a big surprise. I was in the mainstream country music world. I wasn't doing music for children, but kids really resonated, I think, with my voice and with my energy, my playfulness.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to write music that would speak to them in a way that was saying, um, saying things that weren't said to me as a child, that I love you for who you are, and encouraged to use your imagination. And now my mother did encourage me. My father is, as a lot of people in the world, he had issues. I think he had maybe some mental issues. He passed away in 2019. Um, but he had issues with alcohol and all that. So I think I felt this need and desire to, as I was growing, because I was reading every self-help book written in the 1980s and trying to find my way and through healing of some of those childhood wounds. But I just saw these kids come down front of the shows, and I felt like, boy, I wish I was singing music that I really wanted to say to them. So that's what inspired the writing of this album. It started about 1988, and then I took a big break. I got married. I was in a 24-year marriage that ended about 8 years ago. And so I after doing a couple albums before this one, my friend John Mock, that I make all my records with, he said, "What's next?" I said, "We're going to make this record. It's now. It feels like the time." So we ended up writing the rest of the album and a couple of songs that I'd written like in the 90s that ended up on the record. And it is the most important thing I've done to date. It's really my heart and my soul and presence and intention, joy, encouragement. There's just all these things that are in this music that finally is like a record that I came here to make. It's like I came here to do this. This is what all the stuff that happened before was to culminate into this record so far. Then maybe some more records. We'll see. But we'll see.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I love that you're noticing the young kids coming up to you and how that was speaking to you. And actually, again, a little secret I know for people in the audience is that Sylvia has the 46 gene key as her pearl, I believe it is. And the 46 gene key is very much about this. It moves from the shadow of seriousness to the gift of delight. And it's the city of ecstasy. And it's a gene key that is very much about the inner child. And so for this to be the harvest, the pearl is about our harvest, and that this is something that you bring to the world. And I've played Sylvia's music in some of the events that I host, and she's been in some of the rooms when I've played that music. And almost invariably, it's like whether a person is adult or whether it's a child listening, there is this resonance with that inner child within. And there is a joyfulness, and there is a playfulness, and there is encouragement in the words. And people, even, the grown adults that I'm seeing crying listening to it is because it's speaking to that inner child within. And so again, another, like, I just like to reflect these for people when they're being interviewed. If they don't know their gene keys as much, and I'm like looking at your gene keys chart, and it's like I'm seeing it right there. Not only is there the voice, there's this piece about the inner child, and it just lights me up to see somebody who's so lit up with that authentic expression of self and the delight that people with the 46 gene key that I know, many of them don't even realize the delight that they permeate into the rooms and the fields and the spaces that I think that the young kids are just drawn to. And so, that's one of the things that as I've listened to the music, it's that it really speaks to something within me there, that young child as well, that always loved to hear those words of encouragement. And for others listening to it, it sparked creativity too. That's what, it's just like Sylvia, you said, you've been so drawn in by your voice and the voice that's coming through you in this lifetime. And I think that's, when I first heard it, because I get approached by a few people and with music and things like that, and they're not always my music styles. Like country music was never my music style. I grew up in England. We don't do country music. We, we didn't have enough country. We didn't, well, a different kind of country, and and so the first time I played it, I was like, okay, this will be interesting to hear. And it was just straight away. It was like, I think I wrote to you and I said, wow, your voice. It just draws you right in from the beginning. And so I think actually it would be really great if we could play one of the songs for everybody at this time so that they could hear for themselves, but also so that they can feel for themselves the inspiration of some of the words that you might be sharing. And I'm just wondering if there's a particular song in this moment. We'll bring up your Linktree page in a moment here. If there's a particular song you would like, oh, I think we should share this one.
Okay, so are we going to play the video on this, or do you?
Yeah, let's play the video.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I always love for people to hear Avalon because it's the opening song of the record, and this record really is a concept record. I think if someone sits down and listens to it, you don't have to, but if you sit down and listen to it from beginning to end, it will take you on a journey.
It's a story. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I always like that as an intro song. It paints a picture, and to me, it's everything on this album is metaphor. You can take it realistically, or you can take. I just love metaphor. I just live in metaphor as a writer, as a human being. I just think it's so powerful. I know Richard Rudd. It's another thing I loved about when he spoke, and when I've listened to him, is he often will use metaphor, and I'm very drawn to that because it says more than just what specific words can say. So the pictures that this music evokes, I think, is you can even when I listen to it now, sometimes I hear something, I understand something different. It's like something reveals itself that I didn't think of when I wrote it, or even in many times of singing it and listening to it. So I guess we can start with Avalon.
All right. I love what you just said there. It's like, to me, that's the joyful nature of creativity is you write something, you put it out, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I never even thought of it that way. I never looked at it that way. That's amazing. I love it. And it's like, so we are going to start with Avalon. And the way you've done this is it's a picture book so that people can read along with you. And this is your Linktree page for anybody who's going to be looking at it later. Where you can purchase this album, Nature Child. Highly recommend it. And there's what, 14 songs? Is it?
There's 12. There are 12.
12 songs, I beg your pardon. Yeah. So it's full of many different songs, and yeah, all with their own unique messaging and metaphors. So let's listen to Avalon, which many people listening to this are people who know my work and know my love of Avalon as I associate it with Glastonbury. But I think the beauty of this is this came to Sylvia in a way she wasn't even contemplating the Avalon that many of us know it as. And yeah, so we'll listen to Sylvia's Avalon. Here we go. So I should turn up the sound.
Beyond the golden sunset, there's a magic land. Take my hand and we will go there. Anybody can. High upon a crystal mountain, shining like a polished diamond, stands a city few have gazed upon. They call it Avalon. Rising high above the city, climbing through the sky, there's a castle built by love where all the answers lie. All who journey to the kingdom find the walls are made of freedom. Every tear becomes a shining star. In Avalon. Ba-da-da-ba-da-da-bum-bum. 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 Ba-da-da-ba-ba. Standing still within a garden, waters clear and cool, quench the thirst and soothe the souls of all who look into. Only truth can be reflected, only what is real accepted, face to face with everything you are. In Avalon, life is one eternal moment witnessed from afar. So reach inside your soul and know that everywhere you are is Avalon. So go beyond the golden sunset, take a wish or two, set your heart on all it's after, watch your dreams come true. In Avalon.
Okay, now I can't hear you.
There we go.
Okay, good.
Awesome. I
Yeah,
love it. I love it.
thank you.
You had
Thank
fun
you.
making that one.
Yes, my friend John Mock and I do it all pretty much. I mean, we hire the musicians, but John is a multi-instrumentalist, so he plays a lot of the instruments on the record, and then we hire the string players to come in and play the strings and the different horn instruments and woodwinds and things that are on the record. It's a fully produced record, and if you're listening on your computer screen with speakers, you're not getting a really full.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a man named Bob Katz, who's like a world renowned mastering engineer, mastered it. So it's like you really don't hear the full fidelity of it unless you're listening on a CD and hear it. But I'm just so happy with how this turned out. I've never been happier with a record.
nice. It's your pride, eh?
Something that occurred to me while you were talking before we played this, and I think it's important to say out loud because I don't think I've ever voiced this before. But, you know, this music is very uplifting, and there's a mysteriousness about it and everything. But I think sometimes when people do, and people want to hear what I think about this record, and I think what's joyous, and it's self-esteem building, it's encouraging, it's all those words. But I realize, the difference that I don't think I've ever voiced is that I came to this place to be able to write this music and be able to record this music through a lot of the shadows of the work on the Gene Keys. You know what I'm saying? You've got to go into and through the shadows to get to the joy and to the things that are incorporated in this music. And I don't think I've ever said that before. And I don't think I've ever really had that realization. There's a richness to this music and what this music is talking about, because I have, excuse me, spent a lot of years, get a drink here, exploring the shadows. And working with a voice teacher for 30 plus years, every week on Wednesdays at 11:30. Just exploring my voice, exploring, why am I doing this? What is this song about? There's just so much that is in this, but it's all subtle. It's like, unless somebody said it, but I think people can feel it, the resonance of this isn't just, oh, let's feel good kind of music. It's coming, it's a joy that has no opposite. It's a love that has no opposite. It's coming from that kind of place.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, because I think, that's so important about the Gene Keys work. It is that creativity emerges from that space. And so I feel like that's where there's so much resonance within your voice, is that this is somebody who's traversed that. This isn't you can tell that difference, right? You can feel the difference even when somebody's speaking it, when somebody is speaking words of positivity that are simply coming from the mind, versus someone who's been into the depths of the shadows and has this natural, an optimism for the future in our world that isn't forced, that isn't something that is just Pollyanna, as it were, as people might say. And so I think that's what we can feel as you're expressing yourself. And I'm just wondering if there's any particular gene key in your chart, any shadow that specifically kind of, when you first saw it, it really jumped out to you, or that it was like, oh man, yeah, I can totally recognize this as part of the depth of my experience.
Well, I think my purpose is the 22.3. And I think, I'm doing the Venus sequence with everyone right now, and the shadow of dishonor really leaped out at me, because at first I was like, what, dishonor? And I thought, well, I dishonor myself when I go against what I know is true for me, but I do it to please others, because I was a big people pleaser in the 80s. Go here, do that, wear this, do this, okay. There was kind of this if I just do all these things right, then everything will happen. There was an innocence that I can look back on and smile about, but also just a deep need to please others, and I wasn't even on the list. Please me. Oh, well, what's that? So I've come a long way from those days, but the dishonor, and I will be, curious, holding that with idle curiosity and gentleness for the rest of my life, I'm sure. Yeah, but how do I honor my voice? When do I dishonor my voice? When all those are just really rich questions to just keep holding. And it reminds me of something that my voice teacher said to me on one occasion. I was having my 11:30 Wednesday voice lesson, and one Wednesday I was just singing like a bird. Just everything was just easy. Just, I could just feel like I could sing anything. The next Wednesday I came in and just nothing. He's like, I can't sing. I can't, it just wasn't happening. And he said, well, what's happened in your life since last week? And so I proceeded to tell him these things that had happened in my life. He said, well, you know that last week when you sang, those things had not happened yet. They weren't in your voice. This week, all those things are in your voice. I never had that thought before. And then he said, what you had for breakfast? It's in your voice. Everything, every thought, everything that happens is in your voice.
So thank you for that. Thank you for for just sharing that from the words from your mentor, because I think that's so important to reflect on, is that our voice is carrying this transmission. You said that about Richard. It's like you could feel that in his transmission in terms of who he is. And in my work, when I'm working with people through the gene keys, a lot of times there's this feeling of wanting to be heard. And sometimes it's like giving ourselves the space to hear our own shadows, to voice those shadows, to voice them in the presence of a compassionate witness. And at the same time, there's this carrying this voice out into the world. For those who work with your gene keys, your life's work or your brand gene key at the very top is really about our voice. It's our unique voice in the world. And because I consider Sylvia as somebody who has such a strong foundation and grounding in voice, Sylvia, I was just going to ask you if, for anybody who's looking to bring their voice out into, I always think of Wayne Dyer when he says, "Don't die with the music still in you," and but just bringing our voice out into the world, to expressing ourselves. I'm just wondering if there's anything that you can offer from your years of wisdom of singing into the world.
It's a beautiful question. The first thing that comes to me is that was kind of a sense of remembering the frustration of not feeling heard, and realizing that you can be heard by millions of people, as I was in the 1980s, and you can still feel empty. It's about listening to yourself, listening to your inner voice, your inner guide. I've been very blessed that from a very early age, I always just called her, if it was a female voice, I just called her the voice as a child. And I would sit in trees and we would talk, because I had such a very tumultuous childhood with an alcoholic father and lots of violence. And I wanted to run a lot, and she would calm me. And so that was really my first experiences early in life of turning inward. It's like life out here was so chaotic. It really turned me inward, which turns out to be such a blessing. At this point in time in life, I can really appreciate that I tuned inward very early on. But then, I think about Gerald Arthur, my voice teacher that I had for over 30 years. And he had this gift of being able to hear me, and hear me in ways that I never would have been able to hear myself. I could hear myself through him. He had this pure way of hearing, and he worked with everyone that worked with him, people that I've talked to over the years that have worked with Gerald, and he passed away in his early 90s several years ago. He worked with everybody totally uniquely. He met and worked with that person in there to find their voice. He didn't have a formula, because they'll say something that Gerald said. I said, well, he never said that to me. Why didn't he say that to me? No, but then he would say things to me that he hadn't said to other people. So he totally was, but having someone that can really listen. And I think that's one of the things that drew me into life and career coaching, because I've been doing that for the last 20 plus years, mainly working with people one-on-one, doing workshops. Before COVID, I was doing workshops more. But he taught me how to listen to my own voice. And because he could hear my voice, I so trusted him. It was like, if he heard something, it was like, oh, then I would listen for it. And it was like, he could hear real subtle things, like what's going on? Like, yeah, you sound like there's something going on in your life. I hear it in your voice. What's going on? And then I would go, oh yeah, this is what's going on. And when I would voice it, and then I would come back to the music, it was like allowing that to be there. I wasn't pushing it away. And when you allow whatever's happening in your life to be in your voice, your voice comes alive. It's, I don't care whether it's negative or what you would think is stressful or whatever. It's like to acknowledge it and say it's there. It's in my voice. So, okay. So having someone that could hear me better than I could at one point. And now he's gone and I still hear his voice in my head. He's still in there. He's not there. Now he's in here. But I really do believe he is with me always. And, so that's part of it. Listening to yourself. This thing for needing outer validation, which was a huge issue in my early life. It's not so much anymore. It's like I'm the authority. Like when I'm recording this record, when I do a take or do 10 takes, it's like, now that's the take, or that's, I know. I don't I'll say, John, what do you think? No, it's like, I'm in charge of me. And that is such a different place than where I was, 30, 40 years ago. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Oh, absolutely. And beautifully. And I think, I mean, it speaks to, where we really hone our practice into with the Gene Keys work is that deep listening, because it's like you said, it's like we spend so much time wanting to be heard, maybe, but really what needs to be, we need to listen first either to ourselves or to have that person who is a good listener. And something we talk about in the Gene Keys often is that, the greatest leaders are the ones that listen. And I love that you said that, he was such a great listener, and yet you can still hear his voice inside your head. So it's like he probably didn't say as much as he listened, but there's still that imprint and those memories of what he was sharing. So I love that. I think that's really valuable insight for anybody, because we talk about that in the world of Gene Keys is
yeah,
just the art of listening. It's the art of listening. And it sounds like you had somebody who could bring out your voice, because one of their greatest gifts was listening. I'd love to do Gene Keys, actually. That would be so
yeah,
fun.
yeah. But you mentioned my life's work, and you said that had to do with voice, and that made me look at it. My life's work is 26.1.
Mm,
The shadow is pride. The gift is artfulness,
mhm.
which, boy, that really resonated with me. And the city is invisibility, which that was really intriguing. It's like, yeah, because I don't really, I haven't contemplated that fully. Well, I'll spend a lifetime contemplating it, but I really value invisibility.
Right. Yeah. That whole
Because I lived my life on a stage for most of a decade in the 80s, and I've spent the ensuing time since then really relishing my anonymity,
right. Yeah.
because I realized in our culture here in the States, it's celebrity. Maybe it's that way all over the world. Celebrity is such a thing, and it's so, for me, in my experience, it was so shallow, so not authentic, so not who I am. I remember the first time I took a picture with somebody, one of the first times, somebody put their arm around me to take a picture, and they were just shaking like a leaf, just like, and I thought, oh my gosh, this person's afraid of me. This
Mhm.
person doesn't see me. I think that was the big aha about fame and notoriety in that world, was that I thought I would be validated and loved. If people love my music, they're gonna, and not that people don't. I think people really have been touched by my music, even the music I made in the 80s. I'm
Mhm.
not dissing that at all. But
Mhm.
I'm talking about the celebrity piece of it, where people put you on a pedestal and you're not an equal with somebody. I want to feel on equal ground with everyone. I
Mhm.
don't want to be up here. I don't want to be down there. I just want to be here. This, because that's authentic to me. That's the authenticity, to
Yeah.
meet people in the same space, and we're equals. And that doesn't happen, or it didn't happen for me in that space. And I do admire people who seem to carry themselves in the sphere of that world and seem to, like, James Taylor to me seems so authentic and real. He doesn't buy in to the whole celebrity thing. At least that's my feeling when I watch him. There are rare people that can handle that world. And I think I handled it pretty graciously. But it the authenticity for me, that's where I wanted to write music, because I wanted the voice that I've been given to be a vehicle to express things authentically. That is a theme in my life. If it's not authentic, ooh, I know it. Woo, radar. My radar goes off.
Yeah, you just back away from it.
Yeah,
And
it's like,
it keeps those experiences of the inauthentic world. I can kind of relate to my own experiences many years ago in the world of public speaking, and seeing that, like, there was these personas on stage that off stage were very different. And it was like, where is that authentic expression? And and I love it when people say to me, well, you're the same person in person as you are online. I'm like, oh, good, good. And something's connecting here. And what you were just saying, that 2016 key really is. It's about, the shadow frequency there is about that, this need to be seen. And then there's also not feeling seen. And which part of me is being seen? Are you seeing this persona that I've donned for this role? Or are you seeing the real me that's underneath all of this, that is everything from shadow to light to everything in between, right? And it's, and
well,
it,
what I love about this is that it allows you to have some perspective.
mm,
Uh, I it's hard to put into words, but I see that theme very strongly in my life, about as a child wanting to be seen, wanting to be loved, wanting to be authenticated or affirmed. My mother did that. My mother was very affirming and loving and encouraging. But there was this deep desire when one of the parents doesn't give you that. I think you go out into the world seeking it out there, at least first. And what is beautiful to be able to look at this now and see that I needed to go through that.
yeah.
I needed to have those experiences of trying to find love and acceptance and affirmation out there, because I needed to have that experience. It's a human experience to have it. And now to go through that, and for me personally, that I went through that and that I came to the other side realizing that no amount of affirmation, no amount of accolades are going to fill that part of me that felt unloved or whatever, and that I had to do that for me.
Mhm.
Uh, it's so beautiful how this whole thing is, how this hologram or the holographic universe, whatever, how we play these roles and we go through these scenarios, and it just helped me to feel a lightness about it all now that I used to struggle with. And I'm sure I'll have other things I struggle with, and there are
Yeah.
parts of my life where there's struggle, but in this realm that we're talking about now, it's just been really joyful. And I feel like Nature Child, this album, A Dreamer's Journey, is a culmination of something that I was really came to the other side of. And
Yeah.
it's something that feels very authentic to me, and I hope it resonates with other people. You know, in this day and age, music and every system in the world is changing rapidly, and the music industry is no exception. So CDs don't sell very much anymore. It's all about streams now, streaming music. That's how you can help independent artists like myself, is stream our music. uh, but um, I I feel like that's kind of the biggest struggle for me right now, is figuring out how this voice that I have, that I've been given, I don't
Mm.
even take credit for it, that I've worked on, that I've come here. It's like, how do I find ways for it to be out in the world? So when you asked me to do this interview, it's like, oh, this is one way that I can introduce people to this music and to something that feels very real and authentic to me. And hopefully it will help other people resonate with that inside themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I'm grateful that you said yes to it as well. You said yes to it. And yeah, let's I say before we come to an end here, we're gonna play another of the songs from this album. And as you were talking, I feel it's imagination. I don't know about you, but
Yeah,
I'm drawn to imagination because what I'm hearing just through your story is like how you've reimagined yourself and how you've imagined this work, and you've this whole body of work that's come out of your imagination. And it's a catchy tune, and I think the words will speak to people. So are you okay if we share that one next?
yes, I'm okay with that. And let me just tell you a quick little story. When I wrote this with Verlin, he had just been back home visiting his family. Was watching he was telling me he'd been watching his nephew play in the background in the backyard, and he had a cape tied around his neck, and he had a stick in his hand, and he was marching around in the backyard waving this stick. And I just saw it in my mind as dancing a melody. He lives in a song. Wherever he wants to be is where he belongs. Painting rainbows in the sky, doesn't stay to watch them dry. And then we stopped and we couldn't figure out what the next line was. But I'll tell you, just to give you a little example, this song was totally an experience of using our imagination. We had no song title. We didn't know where it was going. We just wrote this song by the seat of our pants. And it just, the imagination led us to the lyrics. It was just so joyful. And the line that we were missing was, he's a butterfly. We realized those lines also described a butterfly in flight.
Oh, wow.
And it's the whole song was just a mystery, and we would just write our way into like, what's this verse? So I just share that to say it's just full of mystique and joy.
And we talk about this too in the work of the Gene Keys, is that these great creative inspirations that come through, it's like we feel like it's working with us. It's not us. It's not the individual I
Absolutely.
that's creating this. And you just spoke to that
Yes.
so brilliantly. So yeah, thank you. All right, here we go, folks. This one is Imagination from Sylvia's album. Again, it's on Linktree. The link will be in the write-up below here. So you'll see that, and enjoy Imagination.
Dancing a melody, he lives in a song. Wherever he wants to be is where he belongs. Painting rainbows in the sky, doesn't stay to watch them dry. He's a butterfly. She rages and rambles on, never at rest. She's here, never staying long. She plays on the edge. Though she tumbles and she falls, she always gives her all. She's a waterfall. Imagination is your friend. It's the place where dreams begin. If you don't try, you'll never know. You won't know now. Imagination sets you free to be what you want to be. So take a thought and let it flow. Oh, let it go. I follow your every move, your wish, my command. just for the ride, a silent partner at your side. I'm your shadow. Imagination is your friend. It's the place where dreams begin. If you don't try, you'll never know. Oh, you won't know now. Imagination sets you free to be what you want to be. So take a thought and let it flow. Waste another cloudy day. You can get away to a world of your own if you just imagine you on a magic carpet ride. You decide how high you fly. Be a butterfly. Oh, be a waterfall. Be a shadow. Be a wishing well. Only you can tell how high you'll fly. How high? Let it flow. Let it go.
Amazing. Thank you for letting us play that one. And I have to say that as somebody who always gets the words wrong on songs, it's nice having the storybook to read along with, so that I know that when I'm mouthing it, even though I put myself on mute because I didn't want anyone to hear it, I at least get the words right. So I have to say I appreciate that.
It's funny. You know, as I was listening to it, I was, you know, I haven't said anything about this much, but all the background vocals on this record, I'm doing them. And my friend John and I, John Mock and I arranged the vocals on this. And the reason these vocals ended up coming out like this is because of COVID. You know, it's like, it's interesting because I usually would have just automatically called a couple of my friends that sing back up and bring them in because I like getting different people's energies on the record. But because we were having to be extremely careful, most of the record was recorded during what started in 2019, but then March of 2020, everything happened. And then, so most of the recording was done in 2020 and 2021. It was released in February of 22, actually on February 22nd of 2022. So it was all these twos, and it was a Tuesday that it came out. And I picked that date for that reason.
I remember that Tuesday.
Yeah, but it was so, it's like it became this, the voice, the background voices on the record became this ethereal, I call them ethereal vocals. They're like the spirit realm that hold
Right.
it all, these higher parts of ourselves, and it's
Where the higher
sometimes the
parts are
shadow
used.
parts of ourselves when it's dissonant, you know. But it's really just when I look at this, thank you for giving me this opportunity to really look at it and be grateful for it on this deeper and deeper level. It's, to me, for me, it's a miracle that this record came about after all this time. And I wasn't ready. I was not ready to record this music 34 years ago.
Wow.
It's only now that I was ready. So I'm just very deeply grateful for that.
And we're recording this during the pulse of the 5th gene key of patience. Patience and persistence and
Oh yeah.
to the world.
Isn't that just beautiful? And so appropriate. Yeah.
Nature's timing. Nature
Yeah.
child, nature's timing.
Yeah.
So
I
for
definitely
anybody who's wanting to get a hold of that album, you can find it on Linktree, and it's Sylvia Music on Linktree. And then they can also find copies of it on Spotify, where they can listen to it on Spotify, the streaming, all those that's where you get your royalties, is through streaming through Spotify and other platforms that it's on. And if they go to your website, which we'll link below, they can also choose which of the platforms, the many platforms they can find you on, basically,
Yeah.
right?
Right. And you can get samples of the other records that I've made in the last several years.
Oh, yeah. By the way, I'm listening to Sylvia's Christmas album right now. And so I'm listening to Silent Night and some other of the other songs that she sings on there in a whole new way now. So I'm really appreciating it. And I think having a personal connection with you and knowing you as I'm starting to know over this time, and just, really connecting to your voice, it really does. It does bridge that connection. So I've been really appreciating that. So we're going to begin to wrap it up here, but I'm just wondering if there's any last words that you wanted to share, any words of wisdom, or anything that felt like, yeah, we've been touching upon that, and I just love to wrap it up this way. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, what comes to mind right in this moment is that I'm deeply grateful for coming into a community of people that I have felt kind of alone, honestly, for most of my life in this spiritual, uh, not pursuit. It's like just deep curiosity and exploration and adventure into this, like, why am I here and who am I really? And all those deep questions that draw you into this work, and then to be in community with others that are very much engaged in the same thing is just, my mind is blown, because I feel like I found my group of people that we speak the same language, and the Gene Keys gives us this universal language amongst us.
Mhm.
And just to speak about things that are very difficult to articulate sometimes.
Yes.
So I'm just, for anyone who's watching this, I'm just deeply grateful that you were interested and wanted to be here with us. I feel them with us, even though we're taping this
Yes.
ahead of time. I feel people with us,
Mm.
the souls that will be with us, and I'm just deeply grateful to be. Uh, I feel like I'm seeing and feeling myself and understanding myself more all the time, but I'm within a group of people who are on that same pursuit, and there's this beautiful resonance that I just want to thank you all for. Thank you, Matthew, because when I saw that you were into Avalon and my first song on this record was Avalon, I said, okay, this is a sign. This is some synchronicity that I have to contact him, because I thought, as I got into the Gene Keys work, I realized it would really be helpful to work with someone who has a handle on this and can get me started in the right, in a more grounded way, because it is a bit overwhelming when you first, or can be, or it was a bit overwhelming for me when I began to come into this work. So you've really helped me get more grounded, and the dream arc, oh my gosh, I love that. I just
Oh, I was
love
going to say the dream arc too. The first animal picture in your Avalon was the fox, there was the other. I definitely noticed the fox there, and the fox is the dream arc key of the 26th gene key, which is your life's work. So I just love that. It was just like the fox and its artfulness is opening up this whole journey.
Yeah. And
Really
there's a
such
little
a,
fox. There's a little fox right there.
yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. My mother, when she was a little girl, had a pet fox.
Oh
There's
wow.
a picture of her holding it, and it sat on her head. So it's really interesting how these animal symbolism comes into this work. I'm just so intrigued with that. I'm eager to learn more.
Awesome. Yeah. Dream arc. Oh, that's deep and there's lots to it. I'm loving it. I'm
Yeah.
loving it. So thank you, Sylvia. Thank you. Thank you everybody who is watching this and supporting you know, bringing this amazing voice out into our community. And I too resonate with just that idea of having a community of people where we've got a language, even if we do just end up talking in numbers sometimes. That was very 64 of you, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so I'm looking forward to seeing more of Sylvia in the community, and just there's more and more people that I meet here that I'm just going to be doing more of these interviews with, and just, you know, it's sharing these authentic voices in the world, and everybody in this community has so much value to bring, and I just love what Sylvia had to say about voice, and I just felt it was such an important message, because like I said, I played her music in some of my events, and it just moved people, and I love to see people cry. No, I love to see people have those kinds of, just that kind of awareness and breakthrough, and sometimes it does mean the releasing of tears, because there's that getting in touch with something inside. So check out Sylvia's albums, and definitely Nature Child, her lifelong work here. And I look forward to seeing everybody very soon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Matthew.